everybody get talked to by God? I don't know. It's an interesting thing this time because you go through thousands of years of lineages. And there's a lot of life and a lot of people. And then all of a sudden, they're gone. By Genesis 10, they're gone. And it's just Noah and his family. And it starts all over again. And you still have this wild period until the times of Abraham. And so I find it, anytime there's not anything written about stuff, I find it a mystery. And typically we have to write in our own stories to figure stuff out. But the deal is, we don't know. We don't know how that worked. But there was this raw faith, I think, that to me has some semblance of, man, that must have been really cool that God saw Job as someone who was so wanting to please him and wanting to serve him in this particular instance. There seems to be this idea of wildness and untamed period. It just, to me, and again, it's just about the mystery of how that relationship with God worked with humans. But getting back to the text for just a moment, God blessed the latter part of Job's life more than the first. After the harassing hand of Satan, Job is godlier and more blessed in the end. What I'd really say, that's a big fail for the devil. It's a fail city for him. He thought, you remember getting smacked by a glove over here during the beginning of the series? The idea that there would be this duel and that Satan loses big time. Matter of fact, there's not really even any interest or mentioning of him at the end of the book. And it's not even close. He lost big times. And to say that the devil has not had his share of humanity fails over time, just check out the garden or any series in entire scripture. You can see activity of that happening. Anyway, so God increased Job's stuff through his suffering, and his livestock doubled as well. Secondly, Job's family was restored. And we're going to get to that right now. That's in 13 through 15. It says this. And he also had 7 sons and 3 daughters. The first daughter he named Jemima. Just note when her sisters had kids. I think that's funny. Anyway. I don't know why I think like that. It's just stupid. Like it's still got my youth ministry brain in there. Anyway, the second, Keziah, and the third, Karen Hapuch. Nowhere in the land were there found women as beautiful as Job's daughters, and their father granted them an inheritance along with their brothers. Now, I think this is very interesting stuff. So let me pull out a couple of points which I read in the text here and then studied it. So there's not much opinion here, but I think there's some interesting things. I think it's an interesting observation if you look at all the animals lost and then the animals restored. Chapter 1, lost 7,000 sheep. Now he has 14,000 sheep. Okay? Lost 3,000 camels. Now has 6,000 camels. Lost 500 oxen. He now has 1,000. He lost 500 donkeys. You think that you have issues with one donkey? We got one? You got 3? You go from 500 donkeys now to 1,000, right? No, that's a honey bunches of nope, right? Okay, so this is clear. Chapter 1, Job had 7 sons. Chapter 1, Job had 7 sons and 3 daughters, all lost when a mighty wind caused their deaths. Now in chapter 42, God gives Job 7 sons and 3 daughters. Is there a problem? I ask. Inquiring minds want to know. So, one might ask, where is the double restoration? Why were the animals doubled and the children not? And I think there is a difference, and I hope you'll agree with me. There's a difference between animals and humans. Are we good with that? So far, so good. Good. Okay. Consider the fact that when an animal, gosh, I know some of you will still cringe at this, that when an animal is gone, they're gone. When a human dies, they continue to live on as a spirit being eternal. Now, could the text communicate a doubling of everything from wealth to animals to now Job is the father of 20 children, 10 in heaven and 10 that he's still raising? Yeah, I'll go with that. Anyway, it's not in the text anywhere, but it just really sounded good. You can come with your own conclusion and go, well, 10 was pretty enough. But the deal is, they raised 10 children. And you wouldn't say, I lost my 10 children, I never had 10 children. You would say, I have 10 children. Matter of fact, I have 20 children. Anyway, I thought it was just an interesting, that's just where I'm taking that he actually did double his children. Now, secondly, the Bible emphasizes the 3 daughters more than the sons. Anybody got a problem with that? Okay. It's in the text. The daughters have names. The sons are called 7 sons. Okay? Now, I think Job was ahead of his time. Certainly, during the patriarchs and the kings and the prophets, there is definitely a lower view of women in biblical world and culture. We see this picture continued even in the Gospels with the woman at the well, the woman caught in the act of adultery. You'd say, hey, the woman's caught in the act of adultery. Where's the guy? Probably a Pharisee. We don't want to do anything with that. So we got to isolate the woman, right? So women in culture typically have been of a lower class than men. Now, Jesus didn't have a problem with this position at all. You see Jesus, certainly in the culture and in the synagogue, that women had very high value. Not only are the sons not mentioned by name, the daughters are known for their beauty and known for their names in the text. And to take it a step further, they are mentioned that Job gave them an inheritance along with their brothers. That is not normal in biblical text. It's also later in biblical text it was not typical done for any daughters. I think Job is showing us, much like Jesus was in his culture, a higher view of this equality to men. Not higher view than men, but an equality to men. Different, obviously, in gifting, difference in maybe chemical makeup, but at a humanity level, very equal. And this many times is bumped up against the cultural norm throughout the ages, can I say, even in America. We gave women the right to vote in America just 103 years ago in 1920. We accepted the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that all are created equal. Again, and that has not always been the case, and it's not always been the practice in America and in the church. And Job shows an equal shot given to his daughters in this text, very much, I think, in the spirit of Jesus Christ during his time on this planet. We know Galatians very well, chapter 3, verses 26 through 29. So in Christ Jesus, you are all children of God through faith. For all of you who are baptized into Christ have clothed yourself with Christ. There is neither Jew nor Gentile. There neither slave nor free, nor there male and female, for you are all one in Christ. If you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's seed. You know, even that statement right there was scandalous. You're of Abraham. What do you mean? Does that mean you're a Jew? No, you're of Abraham's seed, according to the promise. Now, I have to bring a little levity in here, hopefully, because I know that doesn't sit well with everybody. But there's this, because I want to be an equal opportunity offender. There's a story called The Perfect Story. Some of you have probably heard of it, and I couldn't find anybody to give credit to for it. The perfect story. There was a perfect man who met a perfect woman. After a perfect courtship, they had a perfect wedding. Their life together was, of course, perfect. One snowy, stormy Christmas Eve, this perfect couple was driving along a winding road when they noticed someone at the roadside in distress. Being the perfect couple, they stopped to help. There stood Santa Claus with a huge bundle of toys. Not wanting to disappoint any children on the eve of Christmas, the perfect couple loaded Santa and his toys into their vehicle. Soon they were driving along, delivering toys. Unfortunately, the driving conditions deteriorated and the perfect couple and Santa Claus had an accident. Only one of them survived the accident. Who was the survivor? Answer, the perfect woman. She's the only one that really existed in the first place. Because everybody knows that there is no Santa Claus and there's no such thing as a perfect man. A male's response. So if there's no perfect man and no Santa Claus, the perfect woman must have been driving. That explains the car accident. Everybody offended now? Good. Number 3. Don't say I didn't touch you at all in any offense whatsoever. Here we go. 16 and 17. You know what that is? That's called the last two verses of Job, okay? Job has been given a life full of years. After this, Job lived 140 years. That's after this. He saw his children and their children to the fourth generation. What a blessing that is. For those of you that are grandparents, that is a huge deal to be able to think about how many generations you would be able to be blessed at that particular time in history. And so he died old and full of years. So after this, Job lived 140 years more. Now, we really don't know how old he was when all this took place. There's actually two reference points to give us an approximate age of Job. One is the Septuagint. If you've never heard of the Septuagint, it is actually the Greek Old Testament. It was put out around the 2nd or 3rd century BC. So it is a Greek Old Testament. And it says it's the only place that it's found there. It says that Job died when he was 240 years old. The second reference could be made that God doubled his previous, so if you want to go with everything being doubled, if you do want to do that he doubled his previous portions of everything, that God blessed him with another 140 years, you might want to presume that he lived 70. It's just a pure speculation and guess. There's no taking any of this stuff to the bank, by the way, okay? So if that were the case, he would have lived 210 years. So then between those two things, that speculation and the Septuagint, anywhere between 210 and 240 is not just a bad, throw it against the wall, okay? But can we still say we don't know? I just think it's interesting, 140 more years after what? It's a very interesting thought. So, and it's not bad also if you want to put it in between the Abraham and Noah span. So you have Noah who lived 950 years. Life started to get shorter as a result after the flood. And Abraham lived 175 years, and he was in between there somewhere. So it's still not a bad guess whatsoever. The point is that God blessed him with extra years after all of his suffering and his loss. And the main point of this sentence is that he died, in quotations that I'll put, full of years. Full of years. Now, this is an expression that can mean that Job accomplished everything God wanted him to accomplish in life. Can you find that particular statement amazing? The fact, we talk about this a little bit. I did a sermon 2 or 3 years ago, and it was on time. It may have been around New Year's or something like that. And one of those texts is, I think, from Moses, where he talked about teach us to number our days aright, teach us to number our days. He says it twice. I think it's in a psalm. And this idea of numbering your days is the idea of giving an account of them, giving an account of your time. I remember growing up and how we were told that TV was a waste of time. I mean, it was the big stuff going on. There's your Gilligan's Island, there's your Flying Nun, there's your Munsters, the Addams Family, very quality TV at the time. 22 minutes of solid programming that we as children would watch. Andy Griffith. Yeah, Andy Griffith may be the only redeeming one. But anyway, so you put those all together and you think about, people that do those kind of statistics and go, I have spent, of my lifetime, 28 years in front of a TV set. Or 54 years sleeping, or whatever it is, and you look at it and you go, man, that is a lot of time to do that. I could have been doing something else with my life. And Bill, you make the mention of the blessing of the internet being out and going, wait, we can have conversation. We used to do that when we dated, And this idea of relationships get a higher value, and the things that get in our way, sometimes you look back and go, I've really accomplished a lot in my life. 28 years of TV watching. I've mastered that so much. And so I think, it's not to pick on TV. It's just this idea of redeeming our time. And so when you think about this phrase here, I think it is so cool that he died full of years is an expression that there was much that was accomplished. And it's almost this expression that says, I didn't leave anything on the table. I didn't live a life with the regrets. I didn't live this life to go, man, I really wish I could have done this or accomplished that or repaired that relationship. I should have. And you know a lot of deathbed stuff like that where you just go, I've got all these things that I didn't do because I chose to do these things. Or even hold on to regrets or hold on to grudges or unforgiveness. And you took that with you. This is a neat expression. Nothing left. His life was ended full of years. Not just full in this idea of extra years. This isn't a quantity thing. This is a quality statement. So think about it this way. If Job's life, chapter 1, was called by God, blameless and upright, by God, before these major losses, deaths, personal pain and suffering, and challenges from friends, think about what Job's life would have been after this. You know, and you mentioned it I don't mean to pick on you, but you mentioned that life is not the same now after what happened a year ago. And you would always hope that statement that you made like a year ago would still be in effect today to go, my life is never going to be the same. I think the value of what I see has changed maybe, and there's an interest in something more valuable than these things that I thought were valuable. Which is sometimes easier when stuff is taken from you, right? And you just go, well, I had no control over that. I mean, I could have personally thrown it away, but it's gone now, right? And so you look and go, now, I still have breath. God, what do you want from this life? And you can say, well, I don't have the youth, I don't have the energy, I don't have the strength that I used to have. But God, what can I do now to help fulfill these rest of my days that I would die full of life? That's a really cool thought, by the way. And you know what? Everybody in this room gets to choose that. Because you can't say, yeah, but I got a bum knee, and my memory is not what it used to be. And I mean, you can come up with the list. Everybody can come up with their list. But if you're still breathing and can fog a mirror, you know that you can actually do something and accomplish things for the Lord that only you can do. Only you. So, anyway, I just wanted to camp out there for a moment. I thought it was very cool. Anyway, so you might hear an old man singing his own lyrics spoken during the time of some of the worst suffering in his life. You might have heard this even being sung later after he got out of ripping his clothes and sitting in ashes and scraping his sores. Job 19. Verse 25 through 26. For I know that my Redeemer lives, and he shall stand at last on the earth. After my skin is destroyed, this I know, that in my flesh I shall see God. That was while he was in ashes. Now, if he is saying that while he's in ashes, what must his life look like afterwards? I mean, it just kind of makes me the hairs on my skin raise up. Just the idea of, man, I'm not guaranteed. And you know what? I'm not for sure that he was told that he was going to get 140 more years. This is the end of the story. Just to be able to go, I got one more day. What's this one day look like? Because you never know when the other shoe may fall, right? And I get something worse than boils. So there's a few fellows I want to share through their thoughts on the closing of this story of Job. They're out of 3 different commentaries. I thought they were so good. Sometimes you glean stuff from stuff, and sometimes you just go, I can't make this say it any better. One is from Adam Clark's commentary on Job. He said this, the greatest, the most important purposes were accomplished by this trial. Job became a much better man than he ever was before. The dispensations of God's providence were illustrated and justified. Satan's devices unmasked. Patience crowned and rewarded, and the church of God greatly enriched, that's us, greatly enriched by having bequeathed it to the vast treasury of divine truth that is found in the book of Job. That's a pretty cool statement. Here's one from G. Campbell Morgan's commentary. In this great book, there is no solution to problems. That's a really nice sentence to start off with. Just so you know. There is, however, great revelation. It is that God may call men into fellowship with himself through suffering, and that the strength of the human soul is ever that of the knowledge of God. My last quote I wanted to share right here in a row was from Charles Spurgeon's sermon on Job. He had several of them, but from one of them, he wrote this: "We are not all like Job, but," I'll repeat that one more time, "we are not all like Job, but we all have Job's God. Though we have neither risen to Job's wealth, nor will, probably, ever sink to Job's poverty. Yet there is the same God above us if we be high, and the same God with everlasting arms beneath us if we be brought low. And what the Lord did for Job, he will do for us, not precisely in the same form, but in the same spirit and with like design." So here's some of my summary thoughts as we have walked through the book of Job. I could put a whole lot here, but I only did 4, and they're just really brief. Number 1, Job still never gets the why questions answered. I hope you're okay with that, because it didn't happen with Job. To be like, I don't understand this. This doesn't make any sense. Can we live with that? Can we live with this idea of mystery, not understanding, and trust God in it? I think that is an important lesson, and it will be continually driven home all the time in more situations that you have not bumped into yet, or have I bumped into yet. And I will look at it and go, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. God, where are you? You seem so absent. Oh yeah, it happened to Job. Happens to me all the time. Yeah, okay. I can understand that from Job's position, God is still sovereign. He's still in control. And I can live with mystery. That I actually don't have to twist up my stomach, take my Lanta or Tums or anything else to have this churning that I produce in myself to destroy my inner body and my emotions and my sleep, when I can just go, God, you've got this. That's a different kind of medicine altogether. And I think Job shows us a lot of that. Number 2, I want to give honorable mention to Job's wife. She deserves a little street cred. She doesn't even get named in the story, and her one claim to fame is written in chapter 2 when she asks Job, "Are you still holding on to your integrity? Curse God and die." Because I think there's a lot of pieces in the Bible that end up where people get a bad rap because of their last statement in there, right? Not including Samson. But anyway, I think about Thomas. Well, I won't believe until I touch the sides and see the hand. Like, what's he get called? Doubting Thomas. And you know what? He doesn't really get a whole lot in the book of Acts or anything like what did Thomas do? Well, he doubted. And I think this is what happens with Job's wife, Mrs. Job, whatever her name is. So now I have to understand that Mama, and then we're getting somewhere now, that Mama just lost 10 of her children. Uh-oh. You ever get in like a mama bear with her cubs in the Smoky Mountains? You don't do that stuff. Like mama is just a different cat altogether, okay? So this is something that I believe, and I don't get completely. I do some because I'm married to one, but completely understand the brutality of losing all 10 of your children at once. Now, she may have said this particular statement from a place of anger. You think? That she was upset and she was hurting. And she was in despair and she had great loss. But I also want to believe that she was also part of the restoration. Why? She had 10 more children with Job. You think she was involved? Need I say more? She was involved in this restoration because she had 10 more children, which meant 10 more raisin children. She was involved in this restoration in a big time. She was the mother of 20 children altogether. She witnessed the entire life of Job, from faithful husband, father, humanitarian, and a man who was considered by God to be blameless and upright. And now she had to watch Job and all that process. And don't you think that her sentence that got stuck out there for eternity may have had a little restoration change? At least 10 times they had restoration. right? So the deal is, I think Job's wife should get a little bit more credit in this restoration process from what you see her involved here at the very end. She had 10 more kids, so I think she was super involved in restoration. Number 3, Job endured unanswered prayer. I think this is a lesson that we have to continually learn. By the way, our definition of unanswered prayer is probably ignorantly answered prayer because we don't know what God's doing, right? So in our estimation of what unanswered prayer is, let's break that down a little bit better to say unanswered prayer means not get what I asked for. Can we do that one? This is what I was asking for, and this hasn't happened yet. I've asked for this over and over. I am your persistent widow. I've asked and asked and asked, and nothing happens. Well, God tells us to ask, okay? But the deal is this: can I trust God after I ask? And that's what I believe that we also learn from Job in this story. And can we also say, aren't you glad many times that God doesn't answer your prayer? I mean, you can only say that through life experience and wisdom. You can't say it when you're younger and stupid. You just can't do it because you just go, well, it doesn't make any sense. I asked for this. God's God, and I'm asking. Why? I even said in Jesus' name. And you know, I was down on my knees. I closed my eyes. I cut out I had the stereo down too. And so I'm sorry, the iPod, whatever. So the idea of unanswered prayer, are we okay with laying it down? And I think this is really important in prayer, is the surrender part of whatever we're seeking God about, that it is in conversation given back to Him. And then I trust Him. And whatever happens, God is going to be God, and I still will not be. And if I thought I had any kind of sway in it, of any godlikeness in me, then where is my need for God in this? I need God so desperately. And so this idea that we can live with unanswered prayer is an okay thing. Can we be patient with God in our unanswered, or better yet, for those of you that invest, unrealized answers to prayer? You may not actually see them in your lifetime. Are you okay with that? Are you okay with them being answered better than what you ask for? Are you okay with that? Are you okay with letting God be God and doing the best possible outcomes for His glory in the end and not for your glory in the end? Number 4. That's my last. I mean, there's more, but geez, I wanted to really narrow it down and not make another one. Number 4, God is good, faithful, sovereign, and always present. I think it's something that we learn from the book of Job. This is our reassurance that we have in our lives reading the book of Job. Our story is still being written. The pages are not done yet. If you are still breathing, God is still in control. It still doesn't matter what we see, truly. God has truly got everything in His hands. And if we believe that, then we live like that. If we believe that God is in control and sovereign, then we live and act and think and dream like that. We don't dream about these things to go, but, and we get twisted and we get churned up because we trust God, because why? He's good. Now, there is a book written by Fyodor Dostoevsky, and it's called The Brothers Karamazov. He also wrote Crime and Punishment, by the way. He's a Russian author from the 19th century. Anyway, just reading a very reflective part of this, that in his book, Father Zosima is the saintly old monk. And on his deathbed, there's this climactic scene of the first half of the book. And the father is reflecting on his childhood and the story of Job. And he says something like this, and it's written right here in the middle of this book. And it's a long book. Even before I learned to read, I remember how I was first moved by deep spiritual emotion when I was 8 years old. My mother took me alone to church, to morning mass on Monday after Easter. It was a sunny day. And I recall now And again, remember, he's on his deathbed saying all these things. And I remember now how the incense rose from the censer and floated slowly upwards, and how through a little window from the dome overhead, the sunlight streamed down upon us, and rising in waves toward it, the incense seemed to dissolve in it. And I looked and felt deeply moved, and for the first time in my life, I consciously received the first seed of the Word of God in my soul. As a boy stepped forth in the middle of the church carrying a big book, so big that I thought he could hardly carry it, and lying it on the lectern, he opened it and began to read. And it was then the very first time I suddenly understood, for the very first time in my life, what it is that they read in church. There was a man in the land of Uz, and that man was blameless and upright. So his father Zosisma retells the account of Job in his own words. He can almost see, as he's doing this, that he's almost reflecting my life and kind of intersecting it with Job at this particular point. So as you listen to his rest of the story, I cut out a lot of this portion because he goes through all the camels and everything dying and the children and all of that, because you've been through 20 weeks of it, so I won't do that for you. Skipping down a little bit. You can see Father Somisva just almost like he's with the patriarchs. Since then, even yesterday, I took it up, and I've never been able to read this sacred tale without tears. And how much that is great. It's a mystery and unfathomable stuff that's in there. Scoffers say, how could God give up the most loved of his saints to Satan to play with? Take his children from him. Smite him with sore boils so that he scraped the corruption from his sores with a potsherd. And for what? Just to be able to boast to Satan, see how much my saint can suffer for my sake? But the greatness of it all lies just in the fact that it is a mystery. That the passing earthly show and the eternal justice are brought together here, and in the face of the earthly truth, the eternal truth is accomplished. Here the Creator, just as in the first days of creation, he ended each day with praise. What I have created is good. Now looks upon Job, and again boasts of his creation. And Job, praising the Lord, serves not only him, but all his creation for generations and generations, and forever and ever, since for that he was ordained. Lord, what a book it is, and what lessons it contains. What a book the Holy Bible is. What a miracle, and what strength is given with it to men and women. It is just like a sculpture of the whole world and all its human characters, with everything named there and everything shown forever and ever. And what mysteries are solved and revealed. God raises Job again, gives him wealth again, and many years pass by, and he has other children, and he loves them. Good Lord. But how could he love those new ones when his old children are no more? When he has lost them, remembering them, how could he be completely happy with the new ones, however dear they might be? But he could. He could. The old sorrow through the great mystery of human life passes gradually into quiet, tender joy. The fiery blood of youth gives way to the gentle serenity of old age. I bless the rising sun each day, and my heart sings to it as of old, but now I love its setting even more. Its long, slanting rays and the quiet, gentle, tender memories that come with them, the dear images from the whole of my long and blessed life, and over it all, divine truth, tender, reconciling, and all forgiving. My life is drawing to a close. I know that. I feel it. But I also feel that every day that is left to me now, how my earthly life is already in touch with a new, infinite, unknown, but fast approaching future life. The anticipation of which sets my soul trembling with rapture, my mind glowing, and my heart weeping with joy. That's the way this particular fictional father was seeing the account of Job in his own life as it was ending. Although I believe that we may have uncertainty and confusion now and even ahead of us in the future. For those of you that are currently living with confusion and uncertainty, I am sure it's reassuring to know that there can be some more of that in the future. That we will live with toil, resistance, heartache, pain, and suffering for a little bit longer. Our hope in our future is secure. It rests solely in the finished work of Jesus. That's why we can stand confidently. That's why we can face any situation. That's why, brothers and sisters, we actually live with this thing, this wonderful thing called hope. It is through the finished work of Jesus on the cross, the power of his resurrection, that we actually know the ending of Satan. We are confident of our future with God in heaven, and we may suffer for a little while, but joy will come in the morning. 2 Corinthians 4 says, we do not lose heart, though outwardly we are wasting away. You guys know this verse. Yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. Hopefully this is our story. Outwardly we're wasting away. We don't have to convince anybody of that. You don't have to, we can see. We're outwardly wasting away, but inwardly we're being renewed day by day. That's the stuff that hopefully gets visible and seen all the time. For our light and momentary, you want to underline that? You should really underline this. For our light and momentary troubles, those two words are huge, are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. If you need anything from God this morning, you're welcome to come forward as we stand up and sing.